He doesn't like it. He hates the vision thing. He doesn't want to be the vision politician. He thinks it's dishonest. But somebody should say to him, if you don't like the vision thing, you shouldn't be flipping leader of the country, because that is what the job requires.
We have talked about this a fair amount, but good Lord, I long to hear Keir Starmer say something authentic. Do you know what I mean? I long to hear him stand up in the chamber and say, yeah, it's been a bit rubbish. I'm really sorry. We so often talk about this, but the politicians that seem to be doing well everywhere are authentic politicians. And people are just so relieved to think, oh, well, that's probably what he actually thinks. He's saying what he means. And Keir Starmer is just the antithesis. To me, I know we've probably debated this before, but I remember one of my earliest memories was going to interview Gordon Brown and him repeating the same soundbite about 10 times in an interview, and me coming back being very confused and then being told it was, Labour's communications policy. And there's a sense to me that for a lot of them, like Keir Starmer, they've never really got away from that. They think, oh, let's just stick with this. This is uncontroversial. Let's say this. And it's just more and more, I think, strikes people as inauthentic. And he, if he could just cut loose sometimes and say what he actually thinks, rather than just parroting.
There was another thing, funny enough, made me feel a bit sad for him in a way. This is a slightly different flaw in what's going on. He talked about, do you remember there was that absolute furore, I'm sure we've talked about it on this podcast, about when he announced the crackdown on immigration. He talked about
Island of Strangers.
That he didn't, that we're becoming an island of strangers, and everyone, people pointed out that this had overtones of Enoch Powell's racism, and Now he said in this interview with Baldwin that he hadn't read the speech before he gave it. That the speechwriter, actually I talked about this on this programme, I revealed that the speechwriter wrote it and didn't know that it was a Powellite expression, right? But he then said, which I thought was...
It's a bit weird that you could be a political speechwriter and not have that kind of feel for the politics of the last, 50, 60 years. But anyway...
That's a different point. Yeah. But anyway, all right. I mean, give him the benefit of the doubt.
Yeah.
Apparently, just for whatever reason, it was a mistake, right? Anyway, he then said, which I totally empathised with, that the reason he had got so detached from the enormously important set of policy announcements he was about to reveal to the cameras. I was in the room, at number 11 Downing Street, in this very important, again, sort of semi-reset press conference that he was giving. The reason he sort of came to all of this cold and hadn't really given it any thought was that his house had just been firebombed, right? And his previous property had just been firebombed, and his previous car had just been firebombed, right? And I remember when all those firebombings were happening, I remember thinking, oh God, this guy loves his family, right? One of the most important things about him is he is a genuinely passionate dad and family man. And I just thought, wow, you've become Prime Minister and you're under attack, right? And, your sister-in-law is living in your house in North London. And she, it's a miracle that she was awake when the firebomb happened, because God knows, her life was plainly at risk, okay? And so I'm thinking to myself, the emotional trauma of that happening, not just for you as Prime Minister, but for your wife and your children, it's huge, right? Yeah. And he talks about this in the interview, right? So the thing that I'm just staggered by, and actually this takes us back to a conversation that we had in our previous podcast, right? Because it's relevant to all of this, is why isn't there anybody in Downing Street or in the government who is capable of saying to the Prime Minister in those circumstances, Prime Minister, you've just had the mother of all shocks. Don't do the flipping press conference.
I know.
Delay it, right? It can happen tomorrow. It can happen the day after. Everybody will understand, right?
Yeah.
But no, they're also bloody repressed. And he does this stiff upper lip thing and just gets on with it. It's mad.